Boeing MAX 9 back in the air this morning, 3 weeks after that frightening in-flight blowout of a door plug.
That should have been a wake-up call to the FAA, to Boeing.
We believe in our airplanes. We have confidence in the safety of our airplanes.
We're going to hold Boeing accountable for that. We're going to hold them to a higher standard.
Boeing might be cleared for takeoff, but the aviation giant is under increasing scrutiny.
An Ethiopian Airlines plane has crashed on its way to Nairobi.
Evidence is pointing to mechanical failure.
After 2 fatal crashes and a recent mid-air emergency involving its 737 MAX planes, the regulator is paying close attention to its production processes. Former US employees have told the ABC the latest incident involving the Alaska Airlines flight was horrific, but not a surprise.
When I heard it was a MAX plane, I knew it had been built in our factory. My instant reaction was that plane shouldn't have been built. We should have stopped production. Everything was being rushed.
This is shocking because the plane wasn't even 3 months old yet.
John Barnett worked on the Boeing factory floor in South Carolina as a quality manager for 3 decades before retiring in 2017. He said he raised multiple safety issues during his time there, but says they were ignored or minimised.
I've seen how they're built. I'm not going to fly them.
This is a simulator for a Boeing 737 and I'm with commercial pilot Josh Hicks. As a pilot, what's going through your mind and what steps are you taking if you're flying a plane that has some sort of emergency situation like part of the plane falling off, as was the case in the Alaska Airlines incident?
The steps you'd follow immediately would be the pilots putting on oxygen masks to make sure that they're receiving oxygen, they're not affected by the pressure difference inside and outside the aircraft. And then after that, you're focusing on manipulating the air conditioning pressurization units as well as the passenger oxygen units to make sure they're getting oxygen too.
Currently, no Australian airlines have the 737 MAX 9 planes in their fleets, but Virgin and Bonza have the MAX 8s. In response to questions, Virgin Australia declined to comment and Bonza Airlines did not respond. Back in the US, Boeing and Alaska Airlines are facing a lawsuit over claims some oxygen masks on that flight failed.
When I heard that some of the passengers on the 737-9 were saying that their oxygen masks weren't working, it's like, well, we've known about that since 2016 and they've done nothing about it.
John Barnett reported faulty oxygen systems in a whistleblower complaint to the industry watchdog, the Federal Aviation Administration, in 2017, after he said Boeing failed to take action.
The ABC's obtained a copy of that report. The FAA found there were some faulty oxygen bottles. However, the regulator decided to take no action as it said Boeing was already aware of the issue. Boeing's previously said it addressed the problem at the time by removing the faulty oxygen bottles from the production line.
So their culture is all about speed and production and getting airplanes out the door. And any issues, any concerns that you bring up is going to slow them down.
Although Mr Barnett worked on a different aircraft, the Dreamliner, he believes the same oxygen system is used on other planes, including the 737 MAX jets. Former Boeing manager Ed Pearson, who worked at the Seattle factory until 2018, says he reported safety issues on the 737 MAX planes before the 2 fatal crashes.
The company has taken shortcuts across all aircraft programs. This is not the company that it was, and it all comes down to leadership.
The whistleblowers the ABC spoke to all believe the problem started with a change in culture over a decade ago that prioritised speed over quality and safety.
So in 2012, we had noticed that inspection operations and inspection steps on the airplanes were just disappearing.
Aviation consultant Neil Hansford says the Boeing brand is tarnished.
When you start killing that number of people in the number of crashes that they've had, in most countries other than the United States, you wouldn't survive. The stock market would pillory you and there'd be a slaughter at dawn of all the management. But in America, they seem to get away with it because Boeing is a producer of defence equipment and it's almost too big to let it fail.
For a company that was once considered the gold standard of commercial aviation, Boeing's reputation has clearly been compromised. Its share price fell by 20% in a month.
For Ed Pearson, there's a bigger question.
Where was the FAA? I mean, that's the question is, where the hell was the FAA?
The Federal Aviation Administration declined to comment, but referred the ABC to previous fines issued against Boeing for production defects and other issues. It's previously pledged to ramp up oversight of the plane maker.
Why do you think the FAA hasn't come down harder on Boeing?
There's a history of Boeing and the FAA being too close.
Joe Jacobson worked for the regulator until 2021 and believes it's beholden to the aviation giant.
Boeing is able to pressure them to do what Boeing wants to do. There are many problems right now, design problems, production problems. FAA needs to step up and be more assertive in their regulatory role.
A call to ensure safety continues in the skies.